Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Impetus Health Podcast. I am joined today by Dr. Chris Temples. He is the lead physical therapist over at our Vulcan Inverness location. Chris, how you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good today. Thanks for asking, Sean. How are you?
Awesome, man. I'm doing good. It's Friday. I'm about to go home and find some ice cream in the fridge and see what my nutritionist wife has to say about it. Maybe she won't listen to this podcast before then. But so today we're going to talk with Chris about his past and his journey through strength conditioning, fitness, and ultimately into physical therapy. Chris is a doctor of physical therapy. He also specializes in pretty much anything fitness and strength conditioning, but he has a dry needling certification. We might talk about that a little bit on a different podcast. Maybe we'll get into it a little bit today. So we're going to go through it. So Chris, I guess starting off, really quickly, if you could kind of summarize your journey through strength conditioning, fitness, and where you are now in maybe like a 1 minute window. Let's go ahead and just summarize it for everybody.
Gotcha. Well, I grew up playing sports throughout my childhood, through high school, as well as through college. I think I took my first exercise conditioning class in the weight room. I think I was 12 years old at a baseball clinic place. I really enjoyed that. So that was a lot of fun. And ever since then, I kind of had just a love for working out. And then as I progressed through high school and through college, I continued to kind of chase what felt good and best for my own body in terms of different sorts of approaches to working out. I've done CrossFit, I've done the bodybuilding style, I've tried German volume training and other different versions of just things to just see what my body responds to the best.
Real quick, what is German? And I'll get a little closer to the mic too, if you don't mind. Real quick, what is German volume training?
So German volume training is 10 by 10 to failure on every set.
Oh, that's pretty
So you'll do, I think it depends on the program, but you got about 5 different exercises typically in a workout session. But every set is to 10, and the last rep on every set is a 9 to 10 RPE.
Oh.
So 100 reps, have at it.
Yeah,
Did not enjoy.
That's a lot of fun. Okay. All right, so you started in sports. So how young were you when you started, I guess, getting into sports or dabbling? And to follow along with that, was there any strength conditioning associated with it when you first got into sports?
So, T-ball, 6 years old, doesn't really count.
You're not squatting.
Squatting at 6 years old, at least not in that day and age.
Yeah.
But honestly, no, that's when I started. But in terms of a program of some form of lifting or conditioning, that didn't really start until about 8th or 9th grade with varsity sports and stuff like that.
Okay.
I would do some version of hey, I need to be faster, I need to run, I need to be stronger, let's go do some pull-ups or something, I don't know.
Yeah.
But in terms of a structure, that really didn't show up until about 8th or 9th grade. And then our baseball team, we had summer workouts. We didn't have anything in season.
Yeah.
Either through the games or through the practices, didn't have anything there. But in the summer, we would have a conditioning practices.
So for those of you who don't know Chris, Chris is a total strength conditioning nerd. He loves this stuff. He's really into it. So Chris, so you're doing a little bit in 8th and 9th grade. When did a shift happen and you really start to consume it and nerd out on this stuff?
I'd say 11th grade of high school is whenever I started doing my own, trying to figure out, hey, what do I need to do to be a better athlete, to be a better human. So around that time, started working out with my dad a little bit. So we would do some garage gym workouts, and then I got a membership at the local Gold's Gym.
There you go.
Doing that way, I get some strength training in that way. Yeah. And all of that, honestly, I didn't know a whole lot. So everything I was following was more from the Arnold Schwarzenegger style of workouts, just pure bodybuilding type stuff.
Just getting a pump, yeah.
Which, whenever you are starting at zero is phenomenal for
absolutely
anything. Just first step, move something.
Back and buys, chest and tries.
Hit it. But then after that, I realized oh, hey, these aren't specifically helping me out in my sports. So I started trying to start my own modifications, trying to figure out what the best methods were. So mainly playing baseball through high school and a little bit after high school as well. Finding just the methods that would benefit me the most.
Yeah. Man, that's funny. I'm the same way. When I first started working out, I had no clue what I was doing. I'm just going in there chasing a pump. I remember I would literally do sets of whatever until basically I went to failure, which is good.
It is.
But had no idea what I was doing. There was no scheme. Just I'm gonna do 5 sets of of 20 reps at this weight. And whenever I start to fail, I'll move on to the next thing.
I like it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people start off like that. I mean, that's essentially the bodybuilding method. So when did you start, I guess at some point, trying to get a little more scientific with it and try to, because it sounds like you did your own programming too for
Pretty
a while
much,
with
yeah.
it. Okay, when did that really start to take effect?
So playing Ultimate Frisbee through college at the Troy University, started kind of creating like a conditioning program for the team.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Okay.
Mainly, I mean, Ultimate Frisbee, if you don't know, involves quite a bit of running. Very similar to soccer in that regards. So twice a week we had a running program that kind of dabbled on and kind of just, again, still tweaking even to this day. But like, so that way we could go out as a team, get those runs in. That way we could increase our endurance and our cardiovascular systems. So that way we could be better out when we're playing.
That's awesome.
So that started probably about sophomore-ish year of undergrad is whenever like I started like really starting to dive into like what's optimal for how far we need to run or how intense we need to run, what rest do we need type stuff.
That is, and pairing it with Ultimate Frisbee. That is cool. So you're involved in Ultimate Frisbee right now, and I know you're in a I don't know much about it, but I know you're in a pretty competitive league.
Yeah.
Overall. Explain it to me and anybody else who doesn't get the Ultimate Frisbee scene right now. Because I mean, when I say you're in a competitive league, like it's pretty serious, the league that you're in. So what does Ultimate Frisbee look like in the league that you're in? Like the levels, I guess, of Ultimate Frisbee too.
So I mean, there's a whole bunch of different levels of Ultimate Frisbee. I mean, and first to clarify the difference in Ultimate Frisbee and disc golf, there is a difference between the two. Disc golf is you're playing the game of golf with a frisbee, going around hitting your targets. Yep. Played that, it's enjoyable. But Ultimate Frisbee is played on a football-sized field, and you have end zones. You've got to catch the disc in the end zones to score. And play never stops. Constantly moving. So you're basically running for, depending on the scheme of the tournament or the games you're playing, anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour and a half straight without stopping really. Obviously, like as someone scores, there will be a slight break. Yeah. But like in terms of like a true rest, you don't really have one. Which that kind of breaks down to, I've tracked it several times, as roughly 3 or so miles per game.
Wow.
Which if you're playing in a tournament and you're playing 6 games a day, Saturday and Sunday, you just ran a marathon at a sprint speed.
Yeah, because you're right, you're sprinting the whole time.
Yeah, pretty much sprinting. Like, I mean, you'll have some jogs here, some jogs there, but like it's all going as hard as you can.
So I imagine the programming that you were writing for that was very much like interval style stuff.
Exactly, right on the head. So like I think that we did do like shorter distance stuff because obviously, I mean, football field's only so long, so we got to work on that top end speed. But at the same time, you're running for so long, so we would go up onto. We didn't really do anything much past 800 meters or so for like the track days. But then we kind of would have just like a on your own day, like hey, go hit an hour straight of movement type deal.
Yeah, I love that. I love that your whole team followed it, dude. That's so cool to me.
Yeah, but going back to the league and the competitive levels, like I mean, it varies in terms of like who's on your team and everything, but it ranges from like there are people from the professional leagues that come out and play with us from like the Atlanta Hustle, so that's pretty cool. There's some phenomenal players out there, but yeah, so that's kind of some people that are out there. So it's competitive levels get pretty high. Yeah.
What do you think? And this is kind of a random side thought. What are the most common injuries you see? It would be similar to soccer or similar to football?
I would say not. I mean, outside of hamstring injuries, which you kind of see in both. I mean, I've watched people tear hamstrings. I've watched people tear their ACLs. I've actually seen some labrums, like shoulder labrums, in the past, where like if you just land on your shoulder wrong and have like a really big distraction force. Yeah. Or like you land and someone's got like maybe tight lats or something, and they just really wrench themselves into a really not great position. I've seen that as well.
Yeah. Okay. So you started playing Ultimate Frisbee at Troy.
I started actually in high school. I played for the Dothan Club team. Back in 10th grade, and then progressed to Troy after that. Yeah,
and I think this is a really cool thing. But you were homeschooled, so when you in high school, you played varsity sports, you did all that. How did that work? Because I still don't quite understand how that actually works in the homeschool scene. Which I love it, but I don't understand it.
So it really depends on where you live. So where I lived, there were certain schools that were in certain conferences that allowed homeschoolers on those teams. So I was homeschooled up through my 11th grade year of high school, and then the school I played varsity sports for, they swapped conferences my senior year. So my senior year, I did end up going to a private school so that I could continue to play those sports.
Yeah.
So that was kind of interesting from that regard.
Yeah, that's cool though. I love that. I mean, you're still able to do the same sports thing like you wanted to. That's really cool. Okay, so you did that. Now you're at Troy. What does strength conditioning look for you when you're at Troy?
So outside of like I said, we talked about the ultimate frisbee and the conditioning aspect, but from a strength standpoint, I was a little lost, kind of moving into the new environment, wasn't really sure what's going on.
Yeah.
Homeschooled for so long, wasn't really familiar with all that was out there, especially moving to a new town. So actually I was sitting at the house one day with some of my roommates, and one of them goes, "Hey, we got bring a friend next week at CrossFit." And I was like, "What's that?" And I was like, he's like, "Don't even worry about it. You got it."
Just show up.
So I just showed up the next week. It was like Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday type gig, and kind of enjoyed it. Then I went through my, introduction period to CrossFit there. Like it was a really good gym there called CrossFit-Ilium.
CrossFit-Ilium, yeah.
Yes, phenomenal gym. But they had like a 2-week introduction period where like they taught you everything, so that way you weren't just like thrown off into the mix. They had a really solid programming there.
Nice.
And then after that, my very first workout, as an official CrossFit member, was Fran.
You remember your time?
It was like 12 minutes. It was horrible.
Yeah.
It was miserable. I couldn't do any sort of like kipping or butterfly pull-ups. I was straight. It was horrible.
So once you tasted CrossFit for the first time, how in were you to, or did you kind of dabble with it, or did you just go 100% full force?
In. I was there 5 to 7 days a week. There were some times where I'd go 10 to 14 days in a row without a rest day, which as I got older and into more of like, exercise science, like that was what my undergrad major was in, just exercise science. I was like, oh wait, I'm being stupid right now. Let me dial this back. And honestly, as soon as I actually dialed back slightly and allowed my body to rest, because that's actually when change happens.
Yeah.
It's not when you're doing the movement. It's when you're resting and refueling, rehydrating, and everything like that. That's whenever that change happens. So actually decrease the frequency, and my results just started skyrocketing after that.
Yeah, I love that. So many people, including myself, were like that. We had no idea CrossFit existed, and then we tried it, and we could not get enough of it, and we nerded out on it hard. And in that same time, when you bring up some of the nutrition aspect, the recovery aspect, were these things that you were learning as you were in school, exercise science? Were you doing your own research on it? How did you start to figure some of that out?
A little bit of both. So like obviously we have to take our physiology classes, our nutrition classes through school and everything like that, but they weren't like overly specific to a certain group. It was, hey, this is the knowledge out there. We're trying to teach you so that way you can pass your exams. So even through that time frame, I still dabbled with a bunch of different sorts of diets. Like I've tried the keto diet. I've tried, attempted the carnivore diet, not for me. I've done intermittent fasting. I've done carb cycling. I've done a bunch of different things to kind of, find what works best for me.
That's the fun part about you, to be honest with you. You are a true jack of all trades, and putting Chris in a box can be difficult because you have done so much different. Like I wanted to, when people ask me, what does Chris do to work out? I'm kind of stumped at the time because I know you do CrossFit, you run, you do this other stuff too, but you're
starting swimming on Sunday.
You're hard to place, which is awesome. Constantly varied. That's great. I want to get into some of those topics though. So like those diets, like those are some huge hot topic. Where you said carnivore diet, you said you said intermittent fasting, you said that, and then you said something else as well. You said
carb cycling.
Carb cycling. So carnivore diet right now is huge for people who have been going. Like you heard about Jordan Peterson's wife got on the carnivore diet, and she had all these health issues, and all of a sudden she is fine. Like a lot of her issues kind of come away. And I know we don't know a lot of what's going on. We're not LA. We don't know this stuff. But at the same time, what was your experience with some like the carnivore diet?
It's fun at first because you're like, cool, I get to eat beef. I get to eat steak. Like, it's all I'm eating. And that's like fun for like, 3 or 4 days. And then like you're out of carbs and you're like, holy crap, what do I do now?
I'm depleted.
I did it for a month.
Okay. Man.
And it was, you get some really solid results from it. Like you kind of, from my experience, again, varies person to person.
Yeah.
But I toned up a good bit, put on some muscle mass without losing weight. But I also dropped my body fat percent as well. So That's kind of my experience with it.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, it's going to vary person to person. It also depends how much of it you're eating, like if you're in deficit or if you're in a surplus.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, too, they have really good results with it because a lot of people seem like they go from nothing to carnivore diet. So their caloric intake just skyrockets because it's so fatty, especially if you're just doing, you're not looking for lean meats, you're just eating meat.
Eating.
Yeah. So your caloric intake goes up a ton. Your protein intake goes up a ton. So, I mean, you're going to feel better in general. Yeah, that's interesting. And then you went through, what about the carb cycling phase?
Also, so the last time I did carb cycling, I actually paired it with intermittent fasting.
Okay.
Which was a horrible decision. I would never suggest anyone ever to do that, to at least compare the two.
Yeah.
There are definitely times and places for both the diets by themselves, but you need to be a special individual to do both, I think, for a prolonged period of time.
Yeah.
So I paired the two for a month just to see how it felt. But like carb cycling was an experience. I will say the days where I was low carb did not fun days. Definitely noticed a cognitive difference as well as a performance difference.
Yeah.
But days I was on high carb, like I felt like I could rule the world. It was awesome.
Yeah. And we've talked before about you have a really high metabolism. So
Decently high, yes.
For you to put on mass has been difficult.
It is.
Yeah. We have several jokes. People would bring sweets into the clinic or something and Chris is just pounding it and he doesn't gain a single pound and I can look at it and gain 2 pounds. But it's a blessing.
I've lost weight since you've seen me last.
I know you have. And I know you ain't eating any better. No, that's awesome. So on the strength conditioning side, I like to ask people this question, but so you really started kind of nerding out on it. It sounds like when you're 11th grade and you move on from there. What were some of the things, because your main sport was baseball, right? Through high school?
Yeah.
Okay. What were some of the things in baseball that if you knowing what you know now about strength conditioning, you wish you could go back and do, and that would help you with that sport specific of baseball?
Squat way more. Do more pull-ups. Run distance way less.
Yeah.
Shout out to Coach Bruce. And then a lot more single leg and unilateral workouts because that's not something I did.
Yeah.
Like looking back, like take the baseball swing. You're only going to one direction. And that can cause some imbalances if you do it enough. I mean, if you go take batting practice for 2 hours and you're always swinging one direction, well, what's that doing to the opposite side of your muscle groups?
Yeah.
Like you're never going the other direction. So I would have definitely started incorporating a ton of different unilateral aspects to kind of try to balance that out. Which luckily I never was truly injured during any of those events. Yeah. But looking back, it definitely would have improved performance, especially squatting 100%.
Did they have you when you were in school? Did they have you doing anything like that? Like there's really no strength conditioning program, or
like I said, we did like some summer conditioning stuff, but all again going back to distance running type stuff. We did lots of 400, 800 mile runs for baseball, which is a sprint sport. You're never running more than 300 feet at any given time. So like that part, looking back, doesn't really make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah.
Interval training would have been much more beneficial. We did lots of forearm strengthening stuff and rotator cuff strengthening because that's things that we would incorporate, like you use whenever you're playing baseball.
Yeah.
But in terms of like the more like truly functional and like very specific exercises that we should have been doing, we did some jump squats once.
Yeah.
But
once
we never loaded a barbell up.
Yeah.
Which again, looking back, would have been super beneficial.
Yeah. Okay. When did you decide that you were going to be a PT?
I decided to be a PT my senior year of high school.
Okay.
I was at baseball practice, and one of my friends and teammates we were in the middle of like a batting practice scrimmage type deal. So people out in the field, live pitching, yada, 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 whatever. Friends on first base, next guy gets walked. So he just trots over to second base. This person has been in the past semi-clumsy, I guess. Say clumsy maybe, but just injury prone.
Okay.
So he's walking, literally trotting to second base, rolls his right ankle, takes his next step, rolls his left ankle, rolls both ankles in the terms of like 2 seconds. It's pretty tough. And we're like, crap, this is one of our better players.
Yeah.
Like we need him in our lineup. We had a conference game coming up that next weekend, and we're like, well, like in my experience at that time, I'm like, rolled ankles, you're out 2, 4, 6 weeks.
Yeah.
He's got both, probably double. I don't know. I wasn't sure at the time.
Man.
Well, he was back playing in our lineup the next week because he went to PT. And I was like, wait a second.
That rang a bell for you.
That's cool. I like this. So literally, like, from that moment on, I was like, I want to do physical therapy.
Nice.
I had no idea what route that could take or how I was going to get there. But I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to help people get back from an injury, back to what they're doing. At the time, I was like, as fast as possible. But now it's more, yes, I want it to be fast, but I want it to be as perfect as possible.
Okay.
Even if that takes a longer time frame.
Yeah. That's cool. A lot of people, I had no idea what I wanted to be when I went to college, undergrad. So it took me a second. But the fact that you knew that and you could plan out all of undergrad for that helps a ton with the whole process of being a PT. So I want to tell you about our Vulcan run templates that we have in our Vulcan store. We have a 5K and a 10K template, and it's basically how can I PR my 5K or 10K without injury. We use two of the best tools that you can use to prevent injury and also to see if you're getting better or not. We use the 10% rule, which, as we've talked about on some of our episodes, any 10% increase or decrease in volume or intensity increases your odds of injury by about 72%. These templates take that into account. Also, we have the acute chronic workload ratio worked into the template, and that ensures that the program that you're doing is going to either get you better and also prevent injury. It's the really high-tech stuff, but as you're going through the templates, you're going to put your RPE scales in and some other factors, and that's going to let you know if you're in the right place or not. So if you want to do better on your next 5K or 10K, if you want to be a better runner, these templates are for you. They're really simple. The 5K template is a 10-week program, and the 10K is a 20-week program. So check those out on our online at our Vulcan store, and figure out your next run. See you guys. And you always, because you had the background strength conditioning, so you always probably knew you want to do some type of PT that you could use that with. But I mean, let's be real, it's not common. It's just not a common thing in the field. So here with us, that's what we eat, sleep, and breathe is that. So how do you take what you know from strength conditioning and your background and the programming you've done and all the different type of methods you've used, how do you implement that in your practice as a PT when you're seeing a patient?
Well, I mean, it really varies on the individual.
Yeah.
One thing, I mean, obviously, like the way to make a muscle stronger or better is to make it withstand a load, the heavy resistance load that takes it to or near failure through a full range of motion. Yeah. That's kind of like, that's the king right there, which obviously is going to look different from person to person as well as what their own athletic or background is.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not like, yes, we're going to use the same ideas in terms of science with, a CrossFitter. But how that gets applied may look different from a CrossFitter to a bodybuilder to a swimmer.
Yeah.
Like, they're different, just completely different individuals. And then even within that, you're going to look at things slightly differently. I mean, for example, like swimming, super high endurance, especially if they're like a far distance, swimmer. Like, you're going to have to look at that differently than someone that says, let's say Olympic lifting only. They only do that. That's a short, quick power movement, and their muscles are going to be more primed to different adaptations from that aspect compared to the swimmer.
Yeah.
Because, type 1, type 2 difference.
Yeah, and we got to look at all that. I love that. Yeah. Have you, I guess since you've, this may not be a PT, but I guess since you've been into strength conditioning and fitness and like all that, I mean, you've ran, you've done, what's the longest distance you've ran?
Not really ran that far. My furthest, I think, is like an 8 or 9 mile run.
Okay.
So not stupid, but again,
that's a long way.
That's like one normal run without stopping.
Yeah.
But again, like you look at the ultimate Frisbee over the course of like a couple of days, I've accumulated, 30 plus miles over a couple of days.
But you've done a triathlon.
I've done a sprint triathlon.
Sprint tri. Okay.
Which I have an Olympic tri coming up in May.
An Olympic. Are you training for it?
I am. That's why I'm starting swimming on Sunday.
Okay. Sweet. I'm glad you're actually training for it.
I'm actually training for this one.
So what's your training, just off the cuff, what's your training plan for this?
So still working on the exact details for it, but so this one's in May. Honestly, the only thing I'm really worried about is the swim. I believe it's a 0.2 mile swim or something like that.
Yeah.
Bike's 24 miles, I believe, and the run's like a 6 mile run. So like nothing overly crazy, but like if I can get through that swim, I can physically do those other two things. I have no doubt about that.
Yeah.
Especially with my experience in previous ones, like I know roughly how I'm going to feel because obviously the pacing is going to be a little bit different.
Yeah.
But so really focusing, starting on some swimming, starting off with once a week, just kind of start building that familiarity with that movement. Yeah. And as we get about 2 months out, really starting to ramp up that volume to make sure that I'm able to get to that level and feel fine when I pop out of that play. I don't want to hop out that lake and be like, holy crap, I've got to go bike now.
Yeah.
I want to hop out of that lake and be like, oh, I could actually done that twice.
Yeah. I feel you on that. Yeah, I remember that when Christian started signing up. Christian Peters, one of our PTs, he started signing up for a triathlon. He looked over the room at Chris and said, "Hey, you want to do this?" And Chris said, "Yeah." And I think you got on Facebook and you bought a bike.
Yep.
How much was the bike?
Like $150, $200. So there's some room for some equipment upstairs right now.
Probably made in the 90s or something like that.
Would not suggest.
But he was ready. He was ready to go. And you did. How long did he give you before he asked that question? You didn't have too long before you actually did the sprint trial, right? It was like a
month or two. I did zero training for it. I didn't change a single. The only thing I technically did was I got the bike, went on a couple bike rides just to make sure. I was like, oh, I haven't rode a bike in 2, 3, 4 years. I don't know. Let me make sure I can actually still ride a bike. Yeah. That's really the only training I did for it. It didn't come in last. So.
That's all right. You did it. I didn't do it. I remember when I was getting ready for Wodapalooza one year. Wodapalooza had a swim in it, and it was I can't remember the exact workout. It was a long workout, but it had sandbags, had some form of squatting, and it had I think a 400 meter swim, but you had to do it 4 or 5 times. And it was an open water swim, it was in the ocean, and I was trying to get prepared for it. And this is just me telling how odd swimming is for someone who doesn't have a background in swimming. I grew up going to the lake. I swam a ton, but never really swam for distance or time or any of that
Completely
stuff.
Different.
I had no idea. And so I'm going to the pool. I start going to the Y, and I'm trying to figure this out. And it took me, it was 2 weeks of me trying, and I could not figure out how to swim. And finally I said, I'm going to swim for a mile or I'm going to drown. It's one or two is going to happen. And I jumped in, and probably around the 800 meter mark, I started to figure it out. And it was the oddest thing. And literally the rest of that mile felt good. And every time I swim after that, I have figured swimming out. But it took me literally getting to the point where I'm just going to drown. I'm just going to do it, or I'm going to figure it out. So, swimming, the fact that you have a little bit of background in that is so cool, because you don't know some of these things until you've tried it, and you really don't know it until you've tried to train it.
Exactly.
And that's the important part. You've trained a lot of these different aspects, which is cool.
Yeah, which I am excited for the swimming aspect of it, because one of my friends, he's also going to be training. He's training for a half Ironman currently.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And he is a collegiate swimmer. Ooh. So that's who I'm going to start swimming with. And he has all the workouts, all the things. So I'm going to start picking his brain to really get some really good ideas on like the reasoning behind it. Because from what I've talked to him about it so far, is it's very like swim training is different from running training. You don't tackle them the same way.
Yeah. No.
They're very different.
Yeah. Okay. So you've got the tri coming up right now. So you're doing that training for the triath, or you're going to start that training. You're also right now you're doing CrossFit. Ultimate Frisbee season still in right now?
My season's currently done. It'll pick back up right after the tri, actually. It'll pick up end of May, early June.
Okay. What other fitness are you in right now? Is that it?
That's all I got right now.
Okay. Are you on a diet right now?
Not officially. I follow intermittent fasting like 90% of the time currently.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Just because it fits my lifestyle really well. But also I'm not beholden to that. Like, I have no issue eating a breakfast at all, but typically I don't eat anything till noon, and then I eat until about 8 p.m. So I have that 8-hour window for that, but mainly that's just because it just fits my lifestyle.
Just lifestyle. Not a breakfast guy.
Not really, but don't get me wrong, I'll smash a breakfast. Love some breakfast, but honestly, on just a normal day, it just doesn't work out. Yeah, gotcha. I love it. Okay, so moving to some of the bulk of it. So if we're talking about you as a PT, your strength and conditioning background, if someone were to walk up to you and say, Chris, what do I need to do to, maybe they're not injured, but they come up to you and they say, they don't work out. They're trying to get an idea. You're the person they're going to, and they're like, what do I need to do to become healthier? What would be some of the 3 biggest takeaways that you would give them? Tips. 3 big takeaways and tips that I would give someone that doesn't have any background in any version of working out or anything like that. They just come to you and they say, I just want to be healthier. What do I need to do? Number 1, looking at sleep. Like, are you actually sleeping the correct amount to start off with? Yeah. Let's try to work on that. Number 2, this is a great place where like Ellie would come in for a lot of this stuff, but we're looking at general nutrition. I mean, if you're starting off, it doesn't have to be specific, but we need to have a plan and at least tracking so we know like, oh, are we surplus? Are we deficit? Are we in a maintenance phase? What does that protein ratio look like? Because that most people don't eat enough protein, especially when they're starting to work out. I mean, like the absolute bare minimum that current research has shown is 60% of your body weight in pounds. Ideally, closer to the 80%, getting closer to the 100% mark. That's more for bodybuilding. Yeah. But the amount of people that I talk to that are like, oh, I eat 30 to 50 grams of protein a day, and they weigh 150, 200 pounds. Like, that's mind-boggling. Yeah. Like, that's same thing goes for water. That kind of couples into with that. I'll couple that in as that second tip: hydration, making sure that you are hydrated. Like, if you don't have enough water in your body, you're just not going to feel great. Yeah. And then that's going to make you not want to go back to the gym or anything like that, because you weren't hydrated, you weren't fueled, you felt horrible, and now you're going to associate working out as feeling horrible. That's not what we want. And then my third tip, honestly, is, I mean, it will depend slightly on the personality, because that's really going to vary on that. People typically are either like super all in, or they are some people jump into the deep end. Some people like to walk in through the stairs. Like, they're just different individuals. Yeah. But if you've never done it and you know you're not a jump in the deep end person, literally just sign up for a gym, walk in day one, pick up a weight, put it down, walk out. Just start Pavlov dogging yourself into go to the gym. Just go. Yeah. And then do that for a week. Yeah. Week number 2, let's just do like 3 sets of 10 of something. Again, just starting to get familiar. Like, hey, I feel good here. I don't feel horrible when I leave here. So I'm going to continue this. And then once we start like getting that routine of just making sure we're actually there, because, you know, like you said, let's back way up. Say, hey, day 1, I want you there at 5 a.m. We're doing an hour-long workout. Tuesday, I want you there same time. And again, unless you're a dive all in person, you're probably not showing up on Tuesday. Yeah. But if I say, hey, at 7 a.m., I want you to walk into that gym, pick up a 5-pound weight, put it back down and walk out, you can probably do that on Tuesday. Yeah. But that's just going to start building that habit. And then from there, we can start trying to figure out, like, what do you want to do? Which, regardless of what you do want to do, we probably need to start putting on some muscle mass.
I like that. And I asked the question that way because for someone who was just wanting to be healthier, we deal with a population that's injured. So we see the people who are coming in and they're hurt, and they're asking us, what do I need to do? They truly are. I mean, they're literally walking up to us saying, I'm hurt. I need you to help me heal. What do I need to do? And the 3 things that you just said, the last one, of course, is the one that we can alter the most. But those 3 things are the same 3 things we bring up for people who are coming in for PT, and that PT really is just it's a branch of strength conditioning. And if the starting line is someone who's healthy and they're wanting to go, you're starting behind the starting line if you're injured. So we've got to deal with that. But the key components are still the same. I think a lot of times that gets lost in the mix. For sure. So let me slightly alter the question now and come to it. How would you, if someone is injured, would you change any of those things? Or would you... Yeah, I guess I'll leave it there. If someone's injured, would you change any of those things, or what would be something that you would specifically go into?
I mean, if there's, again, random person on the street asking me this question, I'm not changing the first 2 at all. I mean, still got to look at the nutrition at a global scale, hydration, nutrition, food intake. Got to see how much we're sleeping. Yeah. But then in terms of the workouts, like, well, then the first question is, have you worked out before, or were you injured working out? Where is this injury? Like, what happened? I need to know your story before we can kind of make the first step. Yeah. And then, honestly, I mean, we're still going to start moving some weights. It may be lightweight. It may start off with some version of a banded exercise. Yeah. But regardless, we're going to start to challenge the body to promote a healing state so that we're able to get that growth factor going and start that healing process.
I love it, the healing state. That's good. Okay, so we're going to wrap it up here. I'm going to ask Chris just one more question. So with your PT, with everything that you've seen strength conditioning wise, all this stuff, if you had to give a junior year Chris, is going to be about 17. If you had to give 17-year-old Chris any advice as it pertains to strength conditioning, PT, whatever it is, what would you tell him?
Strength and conditioning, I would honestly just give him similar advice to what he was trying to figure out, but like test everything, figure out everything. But I also I'd say don't be afraid to lift heavy. Like that's not something that 17-year-old Chris was around or knew about. But lift heavy, lift often, but also vary it. That's what, in terms of strength and conditioning, that's what I'd tell 17-year-old Chris. In terms of PT, I would also kind of tell him kind of similar things. Like physical therapy is a form of strength and conditioning. It is just for a different population. And that's just how you need to look at it.
I love it. That's good. Awesome. Well, Chris, thanks for being on the show, man.
Hey, thanks for having me, Sean.
All right, guys. See y'all later.